Marco Manger and Frederick Schulze-Buxloh, two guys from Auroville. Auroville is a very, I can say, maybe you will correct me later, but an utopian town, city, based in India, but based close to Pondicherry. So on the east part of India, southeast part of India, you have a small town, Pondicherry. It's quite well known by French people, but because it was a comptoir many, many years ago. And it's not so far from Chennai. So Chennai, then Pondicherry on the south, and from Pondicherry, about 30 minutes, you will find this town. And the town is actually the picture on the top left on the screen. It's Auroville, this utopian but real city. Today, we have the chance for the very first time to welcome two pioneers. One pioneer is Frederick because he was there at the beginning of the town. But also Michael is also a pioneer since he has decided to change his life to design for him and for others something different as a way of life. In other words, even though from the beginning of the week, we designed a way of life, how could we imagine a way of life? Today, in the front of you, you have two guys who decided to have a new way of life. Let me introduce them. Frederick, a German national, first visited Pondicherry, India, in December 1959. He met the spiritual head of the Sri Aurobindo ashram, known as the Mother, an experience that was life-changing. In 1966, Frederick came to the ashram for good, and 2 years later, he joined the Auroville community as one of the pioneers building the first permanent house in the community called Certitude. Frederick's involvement with Auroville has been total in his widest sense of the word. He has been active in physical works, in education, in sports, in promotion of youth affairs, as well as in issues dealing with Auroville economics, organization, and Auroville's relation with the government of India. He has been members of numerous committees, amongst which numbers of working committees, and has acted as Auroville's spokesperson to many dignitaries from India and abroad. Just close to Frederick's, Michael. Michael was born from a German mother and a Spanish father. He grew up in the south of France and explored as much as the classic world has to give. He went to university, got master's degrees in law, business, finance, and economy, and became a lawyer specialized in tax system. Realizing quickly it wasn't his thing, he got a master in management and worked for multinational companies. Again, it wasn't clicking. The power of money, career, and prestige was not comforting his deep need for meaning and connection to something of a higher sense. 2010, fed up with that the system was offering, Michael quit everything and went traveling to Asia looking for answers to his existential inquiries. He found by chance Auroville on his path. Here, they would stay that Auroville called him. He immediately felt home there, the only place which allows him to simply be himself and not hide behind the mask of hypocrisy. While discovering volunteer work in Auroville during 1 year in the office for volunteers, he was surprised to discover how satisfying its activity was. This led him to the question, how can volunteer seem to be happier than employees in a regular company? It is with this question that he started a PhD research on the impact of volunteerism on the meaning of works in the 21st century regarding the place of money and career. During his research, he continued to get more and more involved in Auroville, taking part in numerous different activities, mostly around community building and community living. In 2016, he decided to settle in Auroville because it seems to be the only place on earth offering the space to realize his discovered dream, creating a community incubator based on the principles of impermanence, self-sufficiency, sustainability, do-it-yourself, community spirits, and experimentation on construction, energy, economy, and collective intelligence. Frederick, Michael, that's a great honor, privilege to welcome you for Imagination Week. The floor is yours, as we discussed for about 40 minutes, and then we're going to open the floor to the students and questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you for giving me a chance. Basically, when one speaks, particular with this digital world, one speaks within oneself. And while my journey was shortly described, I recalled some of these highlights of that journey. The thing with looking backwards into one's personal history is while one actually lives it, one is not aware that one is making history, one just is. So it was also for me, and when I now look back and address all these students together with Michael, I might be able to contribute a little bit of the becoming of Auroville and also of its deeper raison d'etre, and also my meeting with the spiritual leader of Auroville and the ashram and my guru. So let me begin with that. And I hope this question and answers in the end of our small presentation will open up again other aspects which I might have forgotten. Very shortly, I come from a well-to-do industrial family in Germany, the youngest of 5 children. My 2 elder brothers were in the German Wehrmacht. One was lost, the other one badly injured. I was born before the war. I grew up in Munich. My vivid memories of the American occupation and the adventure of bombed out Munich, it was for us just a big playground. I finished my school, I got some money, and I wanted to what now is called a gap year, which in my term turned out to be a gap life for that matter. I wanted to go to the States because America have liberated us. My first encounter with a black GI was like Superman in 1945. I wanted to go to the New World America, but I was barred because I had been in a communist place for half a day in East Berlin. So I said, okay, I go the other way around. And by boat in 1959, I took from Geneva to Bombay, 2 weeks of a beautiful freighter boat to go to a new adventure. And I think that has been the tune, or in India, you would say, the mantra of my life. I never quite know what I'm doing. I never quite know which direction is going, but there seems to be a tune, a kind of sound in me setting the rhythms. And my rhythm was, even though, as I mentioned, I come from a quite wealthy family, I wanted to live on rock bottom. I slept in the street. At that time, I slept in the train station. We had a bedding, which means a bedroll under our arm. I slept in the temples. It was a wonderful time. There were not that many foreigners in 1959, 1960. Finally, what now I could call, looking backwards, being on a spiritual search, I came to Pondicherry and met the mother, Mira Alfassa, mixed background, half Turkish, half Jewish, French education, rich genetic background. And as I was introduced, this meeting with her changed my life. This might be open later on for question and answer. I don't want to dwell on what actually happened in that moment to me. But I knew that my life was given to a cause, to a vision, which was based on the vision of Sri Aurobindo, an Indian freedom fighter, a revolutionary, Western educated, a prolific writer, and who might well be the one and big bridge builder between East and West. For us young people at that time in the after war Germany, there were four Indian figures which played a role models, which was Mahatma Gandhi, Tagore, Rabindranath Tagore, Vivekananda, Nehru, and as a fifth one, Sri Aurobindo. They were not aligned to any of the power blocks, neither communist nor Western power bloc. I spent a year, not quite a year, 9 months. Then I traveled on Far East to Japan, did Zen Buddhism, came back to Germany in 61, began my studies, and with my master degree in the making, I left in 66. I never finished it. And then when I came back here to Pondicherry, I heard about a new project called Auroville, which nobody knew quite what it was. The only thing we knew, it wasn't going to be in that little former French colony Pondicherry, but outside in Tamil Nadu, which is our district here. I was at that time had joined the ashram, but I was a persona which was a bit suspicious because I fell in love with a Swedish girl who already had 3 children, and I became father with this woman, which was not done in the ashram. I don't know whether you know what an ashram is. It's the place of the guru, the place of the teacher. And in the traditional Indian education, at a certain age, quite young actually, the children leave their parents' home and live with their teacher, which is also in the West, you might know, in Sparta and other places, this was a tradition. And so the ashram grew on very ancient roots. And I was very attracted, and they were more like a monastery. So you don't produce children in the ashram, you live a monastic life. But the head of the ashram, which we call the mother, she was a free being. She saw me and also the partner was pregnant, and she felt at that time, I'm talking about 66, 67, that this child should be the first child born in Auroville. So she was quite formal on it. She made a book and said, Auroville child, and entered the name and so on. So it was like the beginning, and that's how Auroville actually grows. And even during Michael's time now, whenever there is a new initiative, a new beginning, this is how a new organ of Auroville, the mystical body of that city here, develops, because there is a need, and the need then formats the organ which supplies the demand. So similarly, a maternity was started, and when the child was born and the mother of this child already had 3 children from a previous, education had to be brought up. There was no school. I wanted to bring teachers from the ashram out here, and I was told, no, you have to start everything new. It is a new experiment. Don't copy the old one. That's an important thing to see, that everything which began in Auroville, we can learn from the past, but we should not try to imitate and copy. And I think that is one of the hallmarks of Auroville. Let me skip a little bit about turbulent times. You have to understand there are few pillars of our community. Whether we are able to manifest and realize them, that's another question. But one of them, for example, is no personal possession. Now you listen within. We all need security. We all need to own a piece of land. We would like to, if you enjoy something, a sunset, oh, wouldn't it be wonderful to have a small house here, or a car, or even your partner. We often can only live and enjoy by owning it. And if you cut that connection, it's a totally new experience to be able not to restrain yourself and become an aesthetic, reduced being, but to enjoy the fullness without actually owning it. I think Auroville is good at it. Obviously, the possessive instinct the ownership need is in all of us strong, and we just keep on every day we are struggling on this one. The other one is education, and that is particularly referring to you, without having any certification. You learn because you want to discover the adventure and joy of learning, of new knowledge. And I must say, in my life, knowledge has been driven out successfully through the schools I went to. Our educational principle was based on fear and blackmail. That was directly after the war. I remember very well, if you don't learn those irregular Latin verbs, you will end up on the street. You know, this is an emotional blackmail. Auroville has produced children, and Michael will speak about it, who might not qualify on the traditional way, but there is a freshness, there is an openness, they can adapt, they have still that sense of adventure in their nostrils. The third one is that there should be a self-management, not based on a hierarchical structure. Here's the boss and here, but a collective, might say, consensus. And if it's not a consensus, at least that the mood of the house will make a decision. It's very difficult. It's very slow and time consuming, and people get frustrated. But I think the final thing, it is faster than having a boss, which you then reluctantly follow. In the end, it doesn't really quite work. So there are other very novel things which are now being discussed. Are they able to be done? For example, Auroville has been conceived as a high density urban settlement. You ask, why another city? We have so many cities in the world. But if you take it, and Sri Aurobindo, the founding spirit of Auroville, speaks about that. We are in a process of evolution, and Auroville is just a small laboratory trying new things to accelerate this process of evolution. It is a progressive evolution. In spite of all the things which we are seeing now in the world, as if we are finally destroying ourselves and the planet, it still is moving to a greater light and a higher consciousness. And Auroville can be one of the pioneer places. Now, in order to be able to do that, it has to find a new form of self-governance. It has to find out a new way of coming to decision. It cannot be a hierarchical, old-fashioned type of thing. These are aspirations, and the difference between an expectation and aspiration is that you aspire without actually ever reaching it. An expectation is object bound. I want a final result. And then you get frustrated because you don't get what you want. And luckily, maybe it wasn't actually in the end what's the best for you. So coming to now, for me, having been here now over 60 years, often I'm asked, is it that what you came for in the beginning? Here we have a picture of the inauguration. I was there sitting somewhere there when a handful of soil was brought from all over the world from children and brought into here in the center in this urn to show that we are a family of man. There was a photo exhibition, Family of Man, and if you can look at it, this was an inspiration. And for the mother, Mira Al-Fasa, another model was the kibbutzim in Israel, which was built also as a fortress to defend itself, to locate yourself on the map. And Auroville has located itself. It is now here. The first phase is over. The second phase is coming to an end. We are having structured ourselves, we have a system. And simultaneously with the second phase, and even the first phase for that matter, is not a chronological order. The third phase, to reach out, to find similar efforts, similar attempts, similar novel things all over the world. And coming to an end of what I would like to say, and then I'm obviously happy to answer a question, is when you are asked, are you a sect, are you a religion, is Sri Aurobindo and the mother, are there some kind of holy figures? For me, on a personal level, my experience with both of them, I have not met Sri Aurobindo, were life-changing experiences. But it is not a precondition. The answer to this question is no, you don't have to sign under I believe in this and this. But there has to be what Mother called a bon volonté, a goodwill for the future. The where you live in order to follow your inner voice, your inner destiny. Why are you here, and what can you contribute in a larger form to a better, more beautiful and truer world?
Wow. I think I'd like to maybe to ask everybody just to breathe. Has been 2 minutes of yes.
Michael?
Yeah.
Michael, I just want to make sure that you don't have any issue with your battery, because I've seen that there is a pop-up that mentions that your battery running out.
No, actually, it's just because we plugged on the electricity and the electricity comes in and out. I use that just as a backup, but it's Auroville, so indeed we have a lot of shortage of energy. But I prepared myself, so normally I have more than enough. Yeah.
Thank you.
So I guess it's my turn. Thank you so much, Frederick, for this sharing. I think it's not that easy to digest so many concepts, especially those which are so different. So I would just like, I mean, we have some time. I have about 24 minutes. So I would just like to ask all the students who are connected to, take a few seconds. If you don't mind closing your eyes, I'm not going to check, but close your eyes. And I would just like to actually ask you to recall the song from John Lennon, Imagine. And you will understand why. All right. As Xavier introduced me, I came for the first time in Auroville in 2010. So it was quite a long time after the beginning of this experiment. I came here from France, where I was indeed quite a lost soul. I didn't understand why I was feeling, I would not say depressed, but I was pretty much not that far from depression. I just couldn't understand why all the things that I've been always taught and told since a child, which were be a good boy, go to school, study, get a good job, earn a lot of money, buy a big house, and so on, that would make you happy. And I was not far from reaching out to the big house. I was lucky enough to actually go up the stages really fast after my my different degrees, as a tax lawyer first, and then as a HR manager for this corporate GDF Suez. And I don't know, you come back home and you look at yourself in the mirror and you're wondering, why am I feeling so empty? And then from time to time, you just go out, you spend money on buying stuff or spending money on parties, and you're momentarily satisfied, but then you wake up the next day and you're just still feeling the same. This emptiness inside you that you can't fill up. So this is what happened with me. And I felt I was almost a too good boy to follow all the instructions I've been given. And I decided then to just give it a change. Take a gap year, as Frederick said before. He took a gap year that became a gap life, and I'm pretty much in the same boat now. I just wanted to be really far away from the societies that brought me up, my parents, my family, my friends, just to be out of influence. And just to see when all these influences are away, and maybe some of you have been there or not, but it's a culture that is really, really different from ours. So I wasn't expecting to be influenced by that, but then to be in the middle, in this space where there is no influence anymore, and I can start really thinking by myself, for myself. And this is how, by accident, I never heard about Auroville, but I found myself here. And when I told you to try to remember this song from John Lennon, Imagine, and I think it relates a lot to this week that Professor Xavier Pavier is organizing. Imagine a world without borders, without nationality. Imagine a world without possession, without ownership. And I couldn't believe it when I came here. I came here, and as a tourist, what you can sometimes find out when you just Google Auroville, it's a sect, it's a big money machine, it's a sort of a modern enslavement of the local population and this kind of stuff. It's what strikes you first when you come there because you don't understand. And I was pretty shocked, and it took me 5 days to kind of feel like, okay, I got enough of it. And the day I was supposed to leave, I met this young man, half French, half Indian, born and brought up here in Auroville, who invited me to stay at his place in the forest. And just remembering it, I have goosebumps. Like, this Martanda changed my life. Martanda was this young man who took me in, taught me forestry, didn't ask me for any money, just asked me to come and help him. And then one day I was just like so happy with the work we were doing together. And I was just thanking him, saying like, oh, you know what, Martanda, like, yeah, I love your house, I love your forest and all your work. I mean, it's just fantastic. And he stopped me there. He said, no, Michael, this is not my house. This is not my forest. This is not even my work. All this is Auroville. And I'm part of this place, and everything I do is for Auroville, because Auroville stands for human unity and trying to change, or to inspire other people to change in this world, to actually live and embody this change of no borders, no nationality, no ownership, to all be at the same level. And I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. And then I said, okay, I will give it a shot. I will just stay a bit longer. And I started saying 2 weeks, and then I said, okay, 2 more months. And then I discovered these things about volunteers. It was relating to my HR skills. So I said, okay, I tried to do some work and trying to understand a bit deeper in what's happening in Auroville. Then, as Xavier was saying in my description, I realized like volunteers seem to be much happier than any other people I worked with in France. So I was like, what is this? They don't get paid. They actually almost pay to work, and they seem to be happier. So then I thought, okay, well, that's a subject to study. And then I had some teachers following my progress. So we started initiating a PhD research. And and deeper I got into like trying to understand Auroville and maybe to find the flaws. I found plenty of flaws. It's not a perfect place. As Frederick explained before, it's like an aspiration. In contrary, maybe to the expectation, you don't really need to see it realize itself, but it's more like giving you the direction, trying your best at all time to reach it, all the ideals. This is maybe why we can still call it an utopian city, Auroville. In utopian, by definition, is maybe we'll never reach the ideal, but that doesn't really matter. And that comes also from Indian philosophy, that it's not the goal, it's not the end that counts most. It's mostly the path you're on. And all this sounds a bit, like, yeah, romantic. And we can hear that in movies and all. But I mean, I must say that I was the first surprised to see that I could really live it. I live it fully. And one of the things I've seen here is this whole community. That, like, now, today, we're about 3,000 people, and everybody feels like family because you all came here with an intention. During my research, I realized that the qualification of this place is intentional community. And that makes a big difference with any other place in the world, because people come here with a common intention. The intention that has been set by Sri Aurobindo and the Mother, which is human unity. We don't need, it's not a cult, it's not like a sect, or you don't need to adopt any dogma. I think human unity, I don't see anybody else on the planet who will be against human unity. We're all here, like, we're all humans. And I realized that every single person in this place has welcomed me as a part of a family. I lost my family, unfortunately, like through various reasons. I don't really have much more family left in Europe, but I found a really second family here. And I thought maybe it would be good to help this place with the skills I acquired in university and business school. But then I actually also felt, well, I'd like to try out something else. And this is also one of the things in Auroville. All is about education, but it's not education just for kids. It's for actually what we call an unending education. And everybody stands up for that. Every single Aurovillian I know is ready to teach and to learn in the same time. So I came here with a real strong feeling of learning because I felt, wow, I'm a tax lawyer. What can I do for this place? Or I'm an HR manager. Yeah, okay, I can help a bit here and there. But then just within the first year, I became a sound engineer. And there are some pictures you'll see during the rest of the talk where I've been setting the sound for some events which were like about containing about 5,000 people. I've done that during the first year. I also learned during first year how to become a traditional therapist and to do massages and practice Ayurveda. I learned how to be an interpreter, to do a translation for the French pavilion towards all the other nationalities. I also started studying forestry. Today, I studied also welding. I studied carpentry. I'm now setting up a maker's lab / tiny house manufacturer to develop more tiny houses that can be made by people in the do-it-yourself spirit. All this to say that I keep on learning new things, and anything I learn, I'm actually teaching it in sort of in a sense of a gratitude that I have for those who have been teaching me. I'm teaching it back to all the new people who are coming in this place. And for the first time in my life, and you can believe, I mean, you can imagine as a tax lawyer, I was pretty close to my budget and pretty close to money. For the first time in my life, and it's been now 5 years after it took me 5 years to really detach myself from money. I don't count money anymore. I don't even look at like, do I get a salary? No, actually, since I have not got into the money exchange too much, I don't even have any money issue. I found a system where whatever I do for Auroville compensate me. Like they offer me a place to stay, a place to live. I have my food. I have all my expenses are covered because of what I give for Auroville. And in exchange, I'm not counting hours. I don't even know if I have to sit. Maybe I'm working, I don't know, 70, 80 hours a week. I have no clue because I'm not even looking at what I do as a work. When most people, the Monday morning, you're like, oh my God, I'm starting my week. Here, I'm like, whoa, the week is just starting. I mean, like, what else can I do now? What else can I learn? What else can I make? How can I design something new again? So it's just an excitement, like every single week, every single day. And this is a way of living that I've never believed in. I still even see movies like that. And I was having the same speech of like, you're like 20 or 19, you're going to university and you're saying, when people ask you, what do you like to do for a living? And you're like, what do you mean? It's like, who likes a job? Like, who likes his job for a living? No, I mean, like I can earn money and spend it on hobbies on the weekend. But who really deeply enjoy their passions through the work they do? Some people do, and I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but I wasn't in this philosophy and I was not brought up this way. And here I realized that, God, I don't even have to count my hours. I don't have to complain about anything. Not everything is not easy. It's not the point. Actually, any difficulty is looked at an opportunity to grow and to learn. But I I couldn't really, again, imagine a way of living where I'll just be so confident that this new family that I found would just take care of me. And all what I do is to basically put my passion into action. And this is what I've been doing for the last, 10 years. I've been learning so many skills, I can't really even list them. And I have been having so many students coming over that I learning from me, from the basic that I can give them. And this is what we can see. Imagine a place of 3,000 people seeing per year, we're close to almost 1 million visitors, I think, every year. So this is a moment, as Frederick described, that we are reaching out also to the world, because you see now on the screen, this is the Matrimondiers. This city has come out from nothing. You have seen pictures before. There was absolutely nothing on this land. People call it even an ecological miracle that happened in Auroville. And yes, people came there to dedicate their life, not maybe even sure that they would be having a retirement pension or whatever, but they believe that they will be taken care of because they have given their soul and their life for Auroville. And I'm not worried. I'm 34. and I've been already 10 years here, and I don't see anything that will prevent me to actually spend the rest of my life here without having any worries about what's coming next. So yeah, I think this is it. I'm still on time, I think. We've been about 30 minutes. We can.
That's perfect. Yeah, we have a lot of questions actually. So that's perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you very much for your two speech actually. Question. The first question, maybe for Frederick's. Frederick's, how is it possible to continue this spirit or this spirituality without the mother herself? When she passed away, actually, there is a legacy. How is it possible to continue? And to what extent it's possible to continue for a very long term? It will last a lot of time, maybe decade without her.
This is obviously a question I have been asked, but which I'm asking myself also. And I think it is Auroville, even though you see pictures of its external being, is a very subjective experience. And I would like every one of the listeners to understand what I'm saying is my experience. And there are as many Aurovilles as there are people living in Auroville. And the beauty of it is when we harmonize, it can be something unbelievable, synergetic. And when we clash, it can be very, very harsh because he is defending the vision of his Auroville and I have my subjective experience. But coming to your question, I found out looking backwards, even though I have denounced religion, I was born a Protestant Lutheran, I couldn't ever really go into churches and this whole structure. But I, by nature, is what they call in India a bhakti. I'm a devotee. I am often in my early times needed a figurehead in front of me who I could be a servant to, I could be assistant to, I could sense a sort of personal interaction. Now, then when I met her in 1960 the first time, on one hand, it was maybe the most intimate experience I had because I was suddenly lit up from within. There was no dark corner left. Not that everything was wonderful, but it was looked at. It was not judged, it was just looked at. And can you imagine that you are totally understood, totally looked at, regard? That was an incredible liberating experience. And when I sit for meditation or I go to the Matrimandi Yosu picture, then often in order for me to tune myself in to this, I have a picture of her, I carry a picture of her, but it's not a requirement. And in fact, she warned us and said, don't make it a religion. While the ashram was and traditionally is around a living guru, a living teacher. And traditionally, actually, when the guru leaves, usually the ashram dissolves, unless it is held artificially like a religious sect, like a Osho sect, or I don't know. But normally, as the questioner might have in mind, when the living spirit goes, then the disciples go back to their places. In Auroville, even while the mother was in her body, she made it very clear, when you ask me about your life in the ashram, I give you direction and I am your guide and mentor. When it comes to Auroville, you have to follow your voice, what is within, your dharma, they call it in India, your destiny, and it will tell you what to do. So she was actually already training us into a period when there would be no personal guru, and we have to listen within. And a part of that listening within is also the collective listening. It's not easy. Subjective, how can my inner subjective experience coincide with the same as Michael's? I'm a sportsman, and there are a few incidences, and I'm an adventurer, sailing, going through the Atlantic and so on. There are moments, often in danger or intense moments, where you suddenly have an experience of a team where the spirit of that team is larger than the sum of the individuals. And that happens in Auroville also at moments. And I believe that the period in the larger scale of the human evolution is moving away from the individual-centric vision to the collective understanding of our next movement. When you look at old films, when I grew up, there were the heroes, you know, the John Wayne and the whatever, there were the heroes. They don't have heroes anymore. So this individualized thing is moving away, and maybe that you will experience in your own life also. There are moments, there are instances, there are spaces which can become inspirational, revelatory. They can spell the next step for us, but it's not one person who carries it. So last thing to answer that question is, obviously, what I at that time, 60 years ago, what I signed under and what I expected or aspired for did not come about. And maybe luckily, because obviously it would have been very strange that 60 years later, exactly what happened is going to happen. So that is part of the adventure. You have to be open for changes and the flexibility of it. I think Auroville is finding its own destiny, maybe in the city building, maybe around the space curated by the Matrimandia, maybe in interaction with you and other people in that digital world. That may be the new way of connecting and being there.
Thank you very much. There is a question about, do you believe the outside world will eventually change toward a society more and more like Auroville? Michael, maybe you can start with this one, which is actually very interesting. You worked for a corporate and you've decided to quit to go to Auroville. But to what extent you can imagine that Auroville can influence corporate or can influence the rest of the world?
All right. I think, okay, I will try to see that I have several points coming into my mind. The first one is that is something that I actually heard from myself and from your students, Xavier, the 2 times they came. There is a lot of belief when we are young that we can change the system from inside. Unfortunately, I've been experiencing that trying to change a corporate from within the inside of the corporate is most of the time really, really hard and complicated. And I'm not putting or judging even the people working there. I think it's just a system in which we are. And for example, in economical terms, just the problem of constant growth with limited resources. I think I'm not bringing up something really new. It's not something sustainable. So we know it. But the problem is that as long as we continue to work with a model like that, where we're pushed to sell more, to produce more, to use more of these resources when we're actually getting to the limits of it, for me, can't really sustain itself. But the problem is that the system is there and we have not found an alternative to it. But then what I really got surprised when I actually came here and returned back and forth often to Europe. So for my PhD, I was doing several conferences in France, Germany, and England. I was positively surprised to see in places like Paris, like Berlin, like London, where you feel like you're in the closest point to what we call today the capitalism central of power. The biggest social innovation also happened there. And I've been really surprised and really happy to see that. But on the other hand, I also see that sometimes for them to come up, we need to go into a form of activism. And this is something that we don't necessarily stand for in Auroville, to be an activist, because it puts you somehow out of balance, because you stand for something really strong for yourself, which is pretty right and nice, but then you kind of impose it to others. Where what I feel the hope that I have for the world to actually get inspired by what's happening here, it's what we call in Auroville an integral vision, an integral education, that we cannot just think that we need to bring a new technology and that is going to solve the entire problem. We have to look at every step of the way, which is like from the moment of how do we live, where do we get our food from, how do we speak, interact with our neighbors, how do we build our houses, how do we use our water, how do we use the energy. I come from a energy corporate, and again, you know, the principle of making more energy, producing more energy can't be defeated. And I was with a lot of really dreamers also in this corporate when I was working there, where we were trying to bring up just the idea of how can we use less energy. But in this sense, unfortunately, it cannot work for these huge companies. Like there's no interest in producing less energy. When we are in Auroville, we are trying to put consciousness in every single thing we're doing, every single thing we're using, every single thing we're making. So I think there is an inspiration because we're part of a general network of eco-villages in the world, which are trying to also follow the steps of Auroville. Auroville being the biggest representation of a community, an intentional community started more than 50 years ago. And the numbers of these communities duplicating in the world is quite enormous. And I think we can reach a point where we can find some sort of balance and finding a way to live in the city more in a way that we live here in Auroville. And this is why Auroville is not intending to be just an eco-village, but to be a model for a city where we are completely conscious of the resources we're using and we are managing to find a way to live like this sustainably. And the smart city movement and all these things is for me a first step. So yes, I think a change is coming also because there's no other choice. And I think that when there's no other choice to change, then we can start turning our heads towards people who have been experimenting different lifestyle and trying to get inspiration from it.
Thank you very much. Of course, we don't have so much time to give some details, but there is plenty of projects that Auroville developed inside Auroville itself and influence, like for instance, in architectures as well as solar panel system and so on, has been developed in Auroville. Maybe, Frederick, at the beginning of Auroville, did you face any political complication and legal issues in the process of setting up Auroville?
I've been struggling with this word political all my life because I'm always called I'm the politician here. But I like to refer back to the Greek understanding of the polis and being concerned with the affairs of the city. There is no life which is not political somewhere if you read the word political in the right sense. Yes, obviously, we were running into a lot of roadblocks and resistances. There are certain main features which I think everybody in their own expression will encounter. If you try something new, the old will rise up in opposition and sometimes quite violently. When my first trip after 7 years in Auroville, I traveled through Europe in '73. And romantically thought, now I'm bringing the light to the dark west, and found a lot of hostility. I mean, it was not even aggression. It was just a total rejection. There were few, but the world has changed. And Xavier, let me just reflect a little bit on the first question you asked, Michael, which is inside, outside. Also there, when we talked about our subjective, objective, inside, outside, you might refer to all the dualities which we are suffering under: male, female, old, young, rich, poor. I think we are being forced by external circumstances and by inner drive towards a unitary consciousness. And I think that, for example, the inside-outside, they were asked during the time of Aurobindo, what is this? You're sitting here in a little small French colony, Pondicherry. Don't move out of your room. He was there for 40 years, 50 years, sitting in his room. What is this? You're okay, you are happy. What does that do? And he said, no, it is not a mass conversion which will bring about a new evolution. One drop, one distilled drop might change the whole cauldron. And he was giving an example which is very reflective of the French, and they like to hear that. And then he says, when that mantra, égalité, liberté, fraternité, reached the masses of France in the end of the 18th century and inflamed them to rush to the barricades, it might have been something brought down by a solitary yogi in the Himalayas of a new formation, a new consciousness, which went underground and then found its right time and its right place to emerge as a mass movement in France. So similarly, I'm not saying that we are creating here new mantras for the world, but in a way you might say, if certain small in our laboratory, certain things can find not a solution, but a valuable research, it might have its other effect. And bringing back to equality, liberty, and fraternity, he said, for example, if you look at the power blocks, which I grew up with, the equality has been totally up to absurdum experiment in the communist side. The liberty has been up to absurdum experimented in the imperialistic, survival of the strongest in the West. The time has come for fraternity, but fraternity based on a spiritual value. And I think this is what, in a small experiment, we find here what unites us and what gives this synergetic energy that, yeah, Michael, you do your thing. And I totally disagree with your opinion and with your style and your whole way and your dressing. And forget about it. But there is a deeper lying, not only a fraternity, but even a sense of oneness. This is a bit difficult to explain, but I think that is the only true reason for Auroville. And I think it has its inside meaning, which will find its own time and place in the outside. And I feel sometimes it has already emerged in the outside, maybe in Singapore, maybe in Paris, maybe in Los Angeles, maybe what's happening now in Washington with the demonstrations in a negative form. Something wants to break out and show itself. We have been led by what's happening now there ad absurdum. It is total absurd because it breaks free and makes space for something new.
Great, thank you very much. We don't have so much time. I just want to conclude, ask you two, one last question. What is your dream for Auroville now and for the future? What is your dream for you?
Wow.
You.
Me? Okay, all right.
Dream along.
Me, dream along, all right. Yes. I think personally what I'm living now, I'm really involved in different economical, I would call it, economical initiatives around the future of Auroville. My dream really is that we find this human unity. So the human unity in the sense that we can really trust one another, that everyone is here with their best intention and trying to unify our force to really go together towards a future where we can really see that it's by unifying our forces that we can make ourselves much stronger. And I've just in few examples, it's just that sometimes we're a bit scared of scarcity, and that's part of our economy, the model that we're living in now also, is that we feel like because of scarcity, everybody has to run to get as much as they can, to earn as much money as we can, and save and put on the side for ourselves and to own as much as we can. When we live in abundance, and this is what I think my dream for the future is, to living in abundance doesn't mean to be rich, to be having tons of money. It's just to have what you feel is enough for you at the moment, to fulfill your needs. And when you really look at your needs, you realize you don't need that much. I realized that 10 years ago. I'm living with pretty much nothing today. And I would love to see that we all unify around that for the future. And that could be really an inspiration for the rest of the world, where we don't need to be scared, and to get out of this fear system and to really go into abundance and trusting one another, that if we need it's better to all be in need together, instead of having most people in need and few people who are not, and then not sharing, not being in this world of abundance. I don't know if it makes complete sense for you guys. We are in a lot of conversations like this these days with my colleagues, and it's to really create a sense of abundance among one another. It's a true dream for us. Yeah.
Frederick, your dream.
My dream. Or to be 17 again. My dream, I have been watching, I've been more in that phase, in the 4 stages in one's life, where you become more and more observer and witness. And I can see the need for change is to always break free from the encrusting circumstances which seem to be were helpful as a fortification, but then become a prison. And Auroville has to recognize that it is one among a large network around the world, and it will not lose its own identity, and it's local specific, and it's nothing else in the world like Auroville. But so there is nothing else in other places in the world which try different experiments. And I feel that this widening is a very, very important thing. In India, they have 3 steps, which are very interesting. One, it's based on the truth, satya. You have to have a knowledge of what is your truth. It's maybe not the truth. And then comes the right action, which is not always identical, because it has to be applied in space and time. Like a samurai in the one strike. But in order then, after that, you have to widen again. Auroville is in that 3rd phase. It has to consciously cool down from having established itself, open itself up, and recognize itself of being a unique nodal point among the golden network of Auroville. And that is its only future it has.
Thank you very much, Frederick. Thank you very much, Michael. That was a great pleasure, a great honor to welcome you for Imagination Week. Thank you so much. I wish you a great year. I wish you the best. Hope to see you soon in Auroville, or maybe somewhere else, but probably Auroville. Thank you so much, and bye-bye. See you. Thank you so much.
One thing?
Yeah, of course, Michael. Michael, please.
Just wanted to share, because this is basically my role many times in Auroville. It's like, if any one of your students are actually willing to know more about Auroville or to come visit Auroville, you can really openly share my contact, and I'm completely fine with that. Either WhatsApp or and email.
I will do.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you again. Thank you, guys. Take care of you.
Salam.
Virtually hug.